Welcome everyone to Zoom into Books today. You are going to be meeting Eleanor Dixon, and she is coming to us from England today, so it's a very special day. She writes middle grade fiction about ghost and ballet and volunteers as a coach with the Writing for the Disabled program at her local high school. Eleanor, welcome to Zoom into Books.
Hi, Kathy. Thank you very much. I am incredibly excited to be here and to be able to talk about my books. And I'd just like to say a quick hello to any of my readers who might be out there listening. Thank you for coming.
Well, we are very happy to have you here. And for the viewers on Facebook, if you have questions for Eleanor, please type them in the Facebook comments, and we'll make sure she answers all your questions. Eleanor, please tell us a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write about ghosts in a ballet school.
Well, they always say you should write what you know, and I went to ballet boarding school. I was a ballet dancer for a few years before I started teaching and had my own school. And I wanted to write about a ballet school, but I wanted it to be a little bit different. I didn't want to write the run-of-the-mill boarding school story. And I had an event that happened when I was 10 years old at boarding school, which had lived with me, inside me for the rest of my life. And I had actually written a short story about it many years ago. And that short story morphed into the first book, The Graceful Ghost, which was supposed to be a standalone, but it's now turning into a series. So I started writing that a long, long time ago. And about 16 years ago, and I brought it. It was reborn about 4 or 5 years ago. But the incident happened before I went to ballet boarding school. I was also at an ordinary boarding school in the middle of Wales. It was a very spooky building, as you can see from the picture. And this tower here, which has scaffolding on in this picture, was purported to be haunted. Of course, we're in a big old building in the middle of Wales, and all these old buildings had ghosts. So all children were very scared of these ghosts. We used to do our homework every night after supper, supervised by a member of staff. And one really cold November evening, the headmistress was supervising my year. I was only 10. Well, we were all 10 or 11. And suddenly she said, "Eleanor, will you please go to my sitting room and fetch my sewing basket?" Well, her sitting room was on the first floor, right next to the haunted tower. It was down a long corridor. Our classrooms were at the other end of the building, and Miss Jakes' sitting room was on this first floor next to the tower. I was so terrified. I was too terrified to ask her if somebody could come with me because I knew she'd say no. So off I went, creeping down the corridors, turning on the lights, obviously, but I couldn't turn the lights on in the rooms with these gaping doors, which I was sure were full of ghosts. I made it, and I made it back in one piece. But the situation, that horror and fear stayed with me for a long time. And so I incorporated that, as I said, into a short story. And then it became, when I decided to write a full-length novel, I just used the short story as a basis and expanded it into The Graceful Ghost. Then I was so lucky that The Graceful Ghost was shortlisted in the UK Selfies in 1921. And my editor said, well, this has to be a series, okay? So it can't just be a one-off standalone book. So then we decided that we had to bring it a little bit more up to date. In the first book, there are only girls at the ballet school. And so we decided we would make it a co-educational. So bring boys to the school and make it a little bit more exciting and a little bit more up to date as things are nowadays. So Ballet School Boys was born. And of course, the ghosts are still there and have absolutely great fun with the boys haunting their dormitories. And I deal slightly with problems that boys face even nowadays, the prejudices that they face going into dance and going to ballet schools. So that that seemed to go down very well. That's also won 2 awards. So the Ballet School series is up and running. And the third one, then, sorry, go ahead.
That's terrific. We have quite a few people who are watching on Facebook, and some of them are identifying with this story. One of the viewers said that she had a similar experience and was very impressed that somebody was able to create a book about such an experience. So
excellent.
Please
thank you.
Tell us more. That's terrific.
Okay, so the third book is called Ballet School Rumors, where Katie, one of the main protagonists, and Lauren is the main character in all throughout the books. Katie is her best friend, and Katie sets up a school gossip page on the school internet magazine, which is called On Point. I'm sorry, I've forgotten it myself and I wrote it. It's called On Point, EN.POINTE, as in dancing on point, with a little play on words, on point, obviously, as it's a school magazine. So Katie sets up this gossip page, and of course you can imagine all sorts of things that start happening there, with rumors and ghosts. And there's a boy called Alfie who's absolutely ghost mad, and he's determined to find ghosts. Rumors and ghosts, and there's a boy called Alfie who's absolutely ghost mad, and he's determined to find ghosts. Rumors have and there's a boy called Alfie who's absolutely ghost mad, and he's determined to find ghosts. Rumors have seem to have a loop going on here.
Oh, I am so sorry.
That's okay. That's gone now.
We can cut that part out. So you may continue. Sorry.
That's all right. So yes, so the boy there, nobody except from Lauren knows about the ghosts. So they have great fun, the ghosts haunting the boys. And no, I'm sorry, I've gone on to Ballet School Rumors now. Yes, so Ballet School Rumors. So on the gossip page, people start causing problems, obviously, and it all has to be resolved, and the ghosts help Lauren to resolve the problems in Ballet School Rumors. And I've just finished the rough first draft of the 4th book, which I can't tell you the title yet, I'm afraid, because I haven't decided on it, which is unusual for me, because I do like to, I usually start with the title. It's usually my inspiration, but for this 4th book, I've got a few to choose from and I can't decide.
Well, it is difficult for a lot of authors to write a series. And as you develop your characters, I think the things that make these books so real is how the readers can identify with your character development. So right now, how many books do you have in this series?
There are 3 already published, and there is a prequel called The Ghosts of Amberwood. That it's a novella. It's only half as long as the books. Some readers had asked me about how Grace and Rodney, the 2 ghosts, came to be haunting Amberwood Hall, what had happened to them, how, you know, I explain in the first book that they are children from the 1800s. So they wanted to know the backstory, basically. So I wrote The Ghosts of Amberwood to explain how Grace and Rodney died. It's very light-hearted. It's not, although it's about 2 children dying, it's not horrific or sad in any way. It's very light-hearted. You find the backstory about Grace and Rodney. There's no ballet in it. The Amberwood Hall wasn't a ballet school then. It was Grace's ancestral home. So anybody can enjoy it. And also you can get it for free off my website if you'd like to go along there and find it.
That's great. I have posted Eleanor's links in the Facebook comments for her website. So if you go to her website, you can also contact her there. Eleanor, do you do school visits and speaking engagements?
I do indeed, Kathy, very often. And I love doing school visits because the children are so receptive. And I found children, well, I know our grading system is slightly different here in England, but children from 3rd year to year 8, which is, I mean, year 3 is quite young, but they enjoy having these books read to them. And year 8, which is going on 13 they enjoy them on their own. So I think they cover quite a wide range. And I also have a lot of adult readers, which is very pleasing. I always think that a children's book should appeal to all ages, and I do have quite a following of adult readers who enjoy them.
That's great. I know that a lot of adults really enjoy the Harry Potter series.
Yes.
So that's great. Tell us about your other series, Tally and the Angel.
Tally and the Angel is a totally different series. Again, the main protagonist is a 12 to 13-year-old girl. And this series, I wanted to write something about angels because I felt that magicians and vampires had a pretty good innings over the last few years, and it was time angels had a look in on the literary scene. So that was the inspiration, just to write a book which had an angel in it. And I love Philip Pullman's books. I love his Dark Materials and all those books. And I love the relationship between Lyra and Pandalaimon, her demon. And I wanted to write a story where my main protagonist had a friend who was to her like Pandalaimon is to Lyra. So I came up with the idea of a young girl with an angel that lived in her locket, which had been left to her by her mother. So in the first book, we learn that Tally's mother has died. She's left her a locket of an angel, which is only about this big. And Tally discovers that actually there is an angel living in the locket. His name is Jophiel. Each chapter in each book has a little snippet which tells you the backstory of either a character in the book, or in the case of the first book, Tally and the Angel in India, it tells the story of Jophiel, his backstory. So, and I decided that as I've traveled so much with my dancing and also now with my husband, we do a lot of traveling, that it would be really nice to set each book in a different country so that I can use my knowledge of these countries and share my experiences with my readers. So that's what I did. So book 1 is set in India. Book 2 is set in Canada, in North Yukon, in the snow. And book 3, Japan. And look out for book 4, which is going to be in Greece for obvious reasons, and I lived there for 20 years.
That's great. That also gives readers from other countries a background of places that they don't live, but they understand the kids are pretty much the same all around the globe.
That's right. Yeah.
That's great. So you did live in Greece. Did you want to talk about that experience? I mean, that had to be fascinating.
Yes, I lived, well, I went to Greece with a French ballet company. And then I remember walking down the street on the very, very first evening. And this sounds really stupid, but I saw a bottle of milk in a shop. And I thought, oh, I like it here. I think I'll stay. And why the bottle of milk made me want to stay, I don't know, but it did. So, and that's what happened. I left the company, I stayed, I danced for 2 or 3 years in Greece. There wasn't a lot of serious work at the time. It was quite difficult to work in theatre. So I started to teach, and I started in an expat secondary school. And then the headmaster asked me if I would set up ballet lessons in the evening, because I was just teaching music and movement during the day to the students, and he asked me if I would set up ballet lessons in the evening for anybody that was interested, and he said I could do it on a private basis and charge my own fee, which was absolutely great. So I did that, and from that I was headhunted by a local music school that had a ballet section, and they asked me to run their ballet school section for a couple of years. And then while I was doing that, I decided, well, you know, I need to open my own school. So I did that. I opened my own ballet school. I ended up with 2 schools in the same area. I then relinquished one and kept the larger one until I left. I left in 1997. came back to England, because much as I'd loved Greece and thought I might stay there, I hadn't actually intended to stay there forever. So I realized that a moment had come, I really better go home if I'm going. So I came back to England. I gave up everything to do with ballet. I had already started writing when I was in Greece, and thanks to a very good friend who pushed me into that. I was always telling her stories of what I'd been thinking about when I was out riding my horse, and she said, well, why don't you write it down? And she found a course for me, which was a creative writing course. So I went on that course and graduated that with flying colours. Actually won a short story competition, and that was it. Off I went. I was just writing constantly then. So by the time I came back to England in 1997, I was writing a lot. Yeah.
That's fascinating. And when you were performing, were you in, were they, tell us about your ballet performances. Did you do any theater, or tell us about that?
It was mainly theatre. It wasn't all classical. There wasn't enough classical work to go around, especially in Greece. It was more like, what will I call it? Theatrical reviews. So we would be, so the ballet company of that particular show would be a company on its own. Well, not on its own, it would be part of the show, but we would dance during the show for different things. There'd be sketches and things like that. There was one small ballet company, classical ballet company, when I went to Greece, but I never tried to get into it. I was enjoying working in the theatre and doing various different things. So I worked, yes, mainly theatre. In fact, I recently went, when I first started dancing, I was dancing in the ballet company of an operetta company. So, and we toured all of Italy, and we went to Malta. And I recently went back to Malta for the first time in rather a lot of years. I'm not going to say how many. And my husband and I went to find that little theatre that we had danced in, beautiful old-fashioned theatre. Found it. The people were so kind. When I told them my story, I said I danced here in no, I'm not saying that. And they were very kind, and they said, yes, please do come in, have a look. They took us round. I stood on the stage and thought, gosh, did my 17-year-old self ever imagine that I would be back here after all these millions of years to stand on this same stage again? That was pretty special.
Oh, that's amazing. I know that there are quite a few people who can identify with that too. While we're talking about Tally and the Angel, would you like to read a short excerpt?
I would love to. Thank you. I'll read a little bit from the first book. I'm not going to read from the very beginning. So where we are here, Tally has already met the angel. She knows, she's only met him once though. She knows he's living in her pendant. Her mum, as I said, had died. And Dad has already decided that they are going traveling to India. And so Tally's very, very excited about that. So she's had lunch with Dad and she goes back to her bedroom. Immediately after lunch, Tally raced upstairs. She needed to start packing if they were leaving the day after tomorrow. She'd never packed a case all on her own. She remembered the trip they had all made to Cornwall last summer when Mum had let her help with the suitcases. That's the best way to learn, Mum had said. Tally felt the tears threaten. Don't think, she said aloud. I wonder if Joffiel is still here. She made a sweep of the room. A moment ago it had been empty, but now the angel was floating by the window, his gigantic wings brushing the ceiling and his white robes rippling. Tally had to look up to his face. She couldn't make out the features clearly. He shimmered so brightly she had to lower her gaze. I am always with you, was his reply. I'm bound to the pendant, not the last place in which you saw me. Sorry, Tally muttered. I just didn't know whether you were here all the time or if I had to call you. But you did call me. You said my name out loud. Did you want something in particular? How could she explain? She just wanted to know he was there. He made her want to sing, even dance. How could she tell him that looking at him was like looking at her mum, her dad, her cats, every single thing that she'd ever loved, like looking at love itself, No, she couldn't say any of those things because she was also a teeny weeny bit scared of him. No, nothing really, she stammered, and she bent to drag her suitcase from under her bed. Better to get on with it and show Dad she could be grown up. She frowned at her wardrobe. What would she take? It would be hot in India, so that was a bonus. She wouldn't need winter clothes, and summer ones took up much less space. She started dumping clothes on the bed until there wasn't an inch of duvet visible. When she couldn't think of anything else she might need, she began putting things in the case, rolling and folding, layering and piling, the way Mum had shown her. Then stuffing and pushing and getting extremely cross when the lid wouldn't close. She tried again and again. Why, oh why couldn't she fit everything in? Almost screaming with frustration, she flung the contents of the case onto the floor. Then she looked round furtively. Was that Angel watching her bad behaviour? Yes, he was. And he was laughing at her. Her temper overflowed. Why are you laughing at me? Don't laugh, Tally shouted. I hate packing. I can't fit everything in. I don't want to go. Joffield continued to smile. Don't look at me like that. Why don't you do something to help? I'm not a genie, Tally, the angel retorted, his smile going out like a light. I don't grant wishes or do magic tricks. His tone softened. I'm here to guide you, child. So let me help you help yourself. Get a pin. And if you'd like to know why he wants her to get a pin, you can go and buy the book.
Well, that's very enticing. Please tell people where they can get this book.
Indeed, it's available on Amazon. It's available to order from bookshops. I don't suppose many bookshops carry it as a normal matter of course, but if you ask them to order it, they can. Yeah, and up to now, mainly just Amazon.
That's great. We do have a question. And by the way, I have posted her Amazon page link in the comments on Facebook. We have a great question. Was there ever a language barrier teaching students in Greece? And have you ever considered having your books translated into other languages?
Okay, so to start with, when I started teaching, I could speak a little bit of Greek, and I had learned because I had already been there 2 or 3 years. And the children were my teachers. They were amazing. If I would said something wrong, they had absolutely no shame at all in telling me, which was great. I didn't mind them telling me. And yeah, so I actually do speak Greek fluently now. So that wasn't a problem. Yes, I would very much like to have my books translated, and hopefully that will happen one day. One day I did speak to somebody in Greece, but things take a long time there. So maybe one day.
What made you decide to write for young readers instead of adult readers?
I'll be very, very honest with you, Kathy. To start with, I thought it would be easier, which was, as everybody who actually does write for children knows, that is totally wrong. And when I did get started, I realized that it is possibly a little bit more difficult, quite a lot more difficult. In fact, I even now, I will write a paragraph and then rewrite it immediately in the proper tone for young people. Not in any way talking down to them, but making it more in a more accessible tone. And I absolutely love that challenge. I love it. I have been around young children all my life with teaching and even now with my writing for the disabled and mentoring at the school. So I just feel, and also I like the fact that they are so honest, and everything I write will go under scrutiny. They will remember stuff. They remember it far better than I do. And they will question things. So everything has to be rock solid and watertight. And I love that. I love working with their minds, and I thoroughly enjoy fantasy. My favorite books to read are always fantasy. So I like the fact that I can delve into the fantasy world with the ghosts, with the angel, but it's fantasy in the real world. So there's still an element of ordinary everyday world going on.
That's very true. What is your process as a writer? I know it's interesting between fiction and nonfiction writers. They do have somewhat of a different process. And first-time authors are always interested to hear that from other authors. So tell us what your process is and how long does it generally take you to complete a manuscript?
My process has changed a lot over the years. When I first started, I was what I think is called a pantser. I would fly by the seat of my pants. I would start on page 1 at chapter 1 and start writing and have a vague idea of what I wanted to happen. And then things would spring out of the woodwork, a door would open here, and some character would say something that I hadn't expected, and the story would evolve in that way. Then when I started working with a professional editor, she wanted things to be far more structured. She wanted us to discuss the storyline before I started, and then she likes to have a chapter breakdown before I actually start writing. I find that very, very difficult. I admit, I do find that very difficult. And between you and me, I think for the next book, I might write the book and then do the chapter breakdown, see what she says about it. I don't mind making changes. I don't mind changing at all. I find it very difficult to write the whole story out in summary. I have to wait for it to evolve as I'm writing. So I do the chapter breakdown for her, and we have lots of arguments. And then I say, well, just let me get writing and you'll see, it'll be all right. So I hope by now, after 6 books, she will trust me a little bit more in the 7th. So then I get writing. So start to finish, it probably takes about 6 months. Once I sit down to write the actual book, I've done all the brainstorming and I've done all the chapter breakdowns for my editor, and I sit down with that plan. It probably takes about 4 weeks to write up the book. But I'm a long time getting to that moment where I actually start writing, and that's the moment I'm happiest. And another thing I love, which most authors I understand hate, is I love editing. I love it when I've written the end, which I know isn't the end, it's the beginning of all the hard work, and then I go back to chapter 1 and I start again and go through it and just make it better and better and better and better. And I love doing that. It's for me, I think I like it more than the actual writing the first draft. I'm a bit strange.
I would say that you are pretty much alone in that. Most authors hate editing. It's nice that you don't think every word you write is gold.
No.
And some do. Do you work with a critique group? I know that that's very helpful for a lot of authors.
I have a very good friend, another author, who usually goes through my book before, when it's at sort of the second draft stage. Apart from that, no, I don't, I'm afraid. I don't have any others, just my one author friend who, she helps me and I help her. I hope I help her.
Well, it's true when you can bounce ideas off of each other and get an outside point of view. As one of our viewers has pointed out, that fantasy makes it easier to discuss difficult topics, particularly with the middle grade set, and many times with adults too. Would you like to read a short excerpt of the first series?
Yes,
We
surely,
have not done that.
I think it's possibly interesting that in both my books, although that would be a spoiler, but I do deal slightly with bereavement, and I have had readers say that they liked the way I dealt with, especially with Tally's bereavement in Tally and the Angel, that it really helped their children. So it was interesting that you brought that up. The Graceful Ghost. So Grace is the ghost, and she has been haunting her ancestral home for 200 years. She's bound to Amberwood Hall. She can't leave it. Her friend Rodney, who was a stable boy, he can go anywhere he wants, but Grace can't. And Rodney's found out that she would be able to, if she could help somebody else's dream come true. So we're at the beginning of term and there's a new influx of pupils, And Grace has chosen to help Lauren because she thinks Lauren looks very, very sad and she doesn't know why, and she needs to find out. So it's the first day of term and Grace has been trying to contact Lauren. So Lauren is in the dormitory on her own and she has been unpacking. The sound of voices and laughter in the corridor made Lauren turn round and face her bed again. What on earth? She stared in horror at the mess that covered her duvet. Okay, she'd been a bit wound up, but she didn't remember doing that. Her clothes were scattered everywhere, and some of them were turned inside out. Footsteps approached the door. At the same time, posters flapped and curtains billowed. A few more strands of hair from Lauren's ponytail whipped across her face, and next to her bed, a glass-fronted picture came away from the wall and crashed to the ground. Before she had time to wonder what was going on, everything went quiet, and two girls came in. Lauren stared open-mouthed at the picture. "Oops," said the first girl. She was the same age as Lauren and looked every inch the dancer, petite, pale and dramatic, with high cheekbones in a heart-shaped face. Self-confidence oozed out of her. "I was just standing here unpacking. The wind blew it off. I didn't do anything," Lauren said in a rush. Perhaps it jumped off the wall. Or perhaps a school ghost knocked it off." The girl turned to her companion. "We do have a ghost, you know. Apparently it's some old crone who died here years ago." "Really?" The second girl looked impressed. She must be new too, thought Lauren, admiring the silky red hair that lay in waves halfway down her back. At least I'm not the only one. Had she been at the audition? Lauren didn't remember. "I'm Alison," the first one introduced herself, while catching the end of her ponytail, which was mysteriously uncoiling from its tight bun. Winding it up again, she inspected the plan on the door. "Oh, what a shame," she complained to the other girl. "You're not next to me. My bed's at the other end of the room. You're here next to..." She froze, one hand on her bun and the other about to stick hairpins into it. She turned and stared at Lauren, this time with undisguised hostility. "Lauren Mason, are you the scholarship girl?" Lauren nodded, wondering why that was a problem. Was everyone in this school going to be as cold and snooty? Lauren took a breath. Alison took a breath and pointed at the smashed picture. "Well, you haven't made a very good start, have you?" she snapped. Again, available from Amazon.
Thank you.
Or bookshops.
That's great. You know, the typical girls' school thing, when you sneak boys into the girls' school, that always creates problems.
Yes.
So tell us about we've talked about expanding the ballet school, rumors, and also the Tally series. Is that currently what you're working on now?
It is. As I say, I'm working on the 4th ballet school one at the moment.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. I intend there to be 6, and then 6 or 7 if you count the novella, which is the prequel, and the same in Tally and the Angel. Although it might run to a bit more because I'd chosen 6 countries and now I've found another one that I want to put in, and so
that brings me to research. You have the opportunity to do extensive research because of the travel that you do. Would you like to talk a little bit about the research? Because I know that's so important for authors. You need to have the setting right, the people right. Tell us a little bit about your process.
Well, as I say, I have been to or will go to every country that Tally has been to or will go to. The first one, India, I've visited twice, and it struck such a chord with me. It's a fascinating place. The Taj Mahal, I visited at dawn with my husband, and I cannot describe, maybe if I sat down and wrote it, I might be able to, but in words, I cannot describe the feeling when we walked around the corner and saw that building. Now you can see it here in the picture. It does absolutely nothing for what the reality is. We saw that building and we both gasped and our throats closed and tears came into our eyes. It was the most beautiful moment. And we now have it as a kind of benchmark. So if anything else, and there's only one other thing that's ever come anywhere near, which was a garden in Japan. But if anything is really good, we call it a Taj Mahal moment. And it really was wonderful. And there are things, again, I go back to the old adage, write what you know. There were incidences that happened to us on that, that journey. We went on the trains in India, as Tally does. We had an incident with cockroaches on the train, as Tally does. So little things that have happened to me, I will use in my books, sometimes changed and sometimes not. In Canada, when she goes to Canada, I was actually going to write after India, I was going to write Japan. But my husband and I went husky sledding in Canada in the North Yukon. And it was just amazing. And I thought, oh, Tally's got to do this. She's got to. And the place we stayed, there was a horse there called Tally. And I thought, this is a sign. I have to take Tally to the North Yukon to do a husky trip. So that's why I chose that for the second book. My husband and I stayed in the cabin that Tally and her dad stay in. And again, incidences that happened during that book are things that happened to us either on that trip or on other trips to Canada. We came across a village that was empty. The all-important pressure ridge that happens at the beginning of the book, not the very beginning, but it is sort of the catalyst for the story in Tally and the Angel. We saw that. We saw a pressure ridge lifting up in the lake. So things like that have happened to me, and I just feel that I can describe them firsthand rather than looking up on the internet what it might be. I know what it feels like, and I know what it feels like to rush along the snow on the back of a husky sled. So then again, Japan. I love Japan. Japan is a beautiful country, an amazing, amazing place. So, as I say, it was going to be the second book. It became the third, only recently released. And again, a lot of the things that Tally sees and does, I also saw and did. And one of the most comical ones was we were walking down a street in Tokyo and we happened to glance down a side street. And as we like to say, this isn't something you see very often in Rose Hill, UK. There were a bunch of sumo wrestlers mending their bicycles. So that went into Tally and the Angel in Japan as well.
That's definitely not something you see every day, for sure. Did you have maybe not a scary moment, but a moment in your travels when you were concerned for your safety?
What I did, it's funny you should ask that. It was quite a few years ago. My husband and I went to Canada and had a holiday on the side of a lake. And we went out one day on a snowmobile or a skidoo. I wasn't keen because I'm not mechanically minded, but he is. So off we went on this skidoo. They gave us, the people that rented us the skidoo gave us a map. It was an A5 piece of paper and it covered something like 50,000 square miles. So it wasn't terribly detailed. So off we went and my husband was having a wonderful time. We were just going across frozen lakes and up and down hills and all over the place, had absolutely no idea where we were. We didn't see a soul all day long. And then it got to the point, oh no, we slid into a ravine. It was like the side of the edge. It was like a ditch. It was quite deep, but the snowmobile slid into it. And we couldn't get it out. Our combined strength wasn't enough to push this snowmobile out. So we thought, well, what on earth's going to happen? And all of a sudden, another snowmobile came along the top with a young couple on, and they helped us out. They pulled the snowmobile out, and then off they went. And it was just bizarre because we hadn't seen anybody all day. Anyway, off we toddled, and carried on. And suddenly we realized that we were running out of petrol. We had absolutely no idea where we were, no idea whatsoever. We were in the middle of a gigantic frozen lake. And this, I will forgive you if you don't believe me, but I promise you this is absolute truth. We're going along the middle of the lake. My husband's thinking, what are we going to do? It was before the days of mobile phone coverage. There were mobile phones, it wasn't that long ago, but we didn't have coverage. They hadn't given us walkie-talkies. We had nothing. Going along, he's thinking, oh my goodness, any minute now we're going to run out of petrol. What are we going to do? We could see something sticking up in the snow in front of us. So we headed for it. And when we got there, it was a wooden finger post, which was pointing to the left, and it said fuel this way. It was like something out of Walt Disney. We could not believe it. It was, if Bugs Bunny had jumped up and said, it couldn't have been more bizarre. So we followed, we went the way it said, and we arrived at the shore of the lake, at a village or a small town. We thought, phew, we're saved. But we couldn't find anybody. It was absolutely empty. It was a summer village. There was nobody around. All the houses were shut up. We just trudged through the streets until we got to the outskirts. We found a petrol station, and it looked closed, but we went up to the thing, knocked on the window, and there was somebody there. Huge relief. He opened the door. Oh, he says, you're very lucky to find me. I'm not usually here. I've only come to do a few jobs. So he gave us petrol. We then went to pay with a credit card. He didn't take credit cards. He said, that's okay, that's fine. Come back tomorrow in the car and pay me. And off we went. Other things happened along the way. But it was, I really thought in that moment we were going to die. And if I write about angels, part of me says, there were angels looking after us that day. How did that couple just arrive? How did that man happen to be there? We were, first of all, very foolish to do something like that. But secondly, very, very well looked after. So, and the next day, I felt like I'd been reborn. I refused to leave the cabin, lit the fire, sat there and thought, I'm alive, I'm safe, I'm home. Well, not home, but in our cabin. And I just felt like I had been reborn. It was quite an amazing experience.
That's an amazing story. And you did have angels watching over you.
I believe so.
That is amazing. As someone has pointed out in the comments, when you write from true experience, it really brings it alive for the readers. How long have you been writing? If
I go back to my school days, I used to write everybody else's essays for them because I enjoyed writing so much. But I really started writing in about 1993, 94. That was when I did the creative writing course. I didn't actually, I wrote a children's book when I first came to England, which is no longer in publication. Maybe one day I'll get back to rewriting it, but it definitely needs a rewrite because I have grown so much as a writer. You know, the book that I wrote way back in 98 is not me as a writer now. And I'm quite glad it's not in print because I wouldn't want anybody to think that's how I write now. I have grown, I have learned so much, and I'm always learning, always learning. My editor is amazing. She's very strict with me, and it's just fabulous. So I started writing, as I say, The Graceful Ghost, I started writing in about 2005. I had quite a bit of a gap then because we were traveling so much. I didn't have time to sit and write creatively. I did write, and I do write every day. I write my diary, and I write travel blogs for the journeys that we've been on. So I was writing, but not writing for publication. Writing for publication, I started again in about 2019, which was when I revisited The Graceful Ghost. I had written it in 2005, but I revisited it, rewrote it, and wrote Tally and the Angel Book 1. And that's, I was up and away then, just like the floodgates opened and off I went, couldn't stop.
Well, and as I tell other authors, the more you write, the better you get, the more you understand your characters and the direction of your stories. So you have done book signings and speaking engagements. So I ask all the authors who come on Zoom into Books, what is your most memorable book moment from the time your first book was published?
I think my most memorable moment is walking into a school where the children had read my book, my books. They'd looked up online. Their teacher had got, because they all have screens in the schools nowadays, don't they? Not like blackboards that we used to have. They'd looked on my website, they'd found out about what I did and how I came to be writing. And it was just a most amazing feeling to go in there, and these children couldn't wait to see the person who'd written the book that they'd read. It was wonderful, and they had books for me to sign for them, and it was a wonderful school. It was what we call in England a primary school. So the children were about 9 or 10, and they just came up to me with their books, and one of them wrote me the most beautiful fan mail letter, my first fan mail letter, I think, ever. It was just wonderful, absolutely wonderful. She said, "I think you're the best author ever in the world ever." So, second that.
That's wonderful. And that's what you want to hear when you're out visiting. That's for sure. So tell the viewers how people can get in touch with you. I'm sure you do virtual visits as well as in-person visits.
Definitely. Yes.
Tell the people how they can get in touch with you and get information.
Okay, well, if you go to my website, which is eleanordixon.com, www.eleanordixon.com, everything's on there. My email address, my contact details. I am more than happy, as Kathy said, to do school visits, to do virtual visits. I just love I love interacting with the children. Send me a line, just email me. You can, if you go to my website, you can pick up the Ghosts of Amberwood for free. So read that, and if you like it, well, maybe then you'll want to read more of my work. But it's all there on my website. So Eleanor Dixon, one word, well, no gaps.com. And I look forward to seeing you, and I love hearing from people.
That's wonderful. And Eleanor is also an award-winning author. She's won national and international awards. So check out her website, go to her Amazon Authors Central page, and please check out her website. And Eleanor, I want to thank you so much for coming on Zoom into Books. You have been a delight, and I know that people have loved meeting you and hearing about your stories.
Thank you, Kathy. It's been fabulous. The time's gone in just a flash, but it's been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And for the people who have joined us, please check out our YouTube channel. Eleanor's video will be on the YouTube channel in the coming weeks. And it will always be available on the Zoom into Books Facebook page. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.